You're watching the Team Nerd Tech Show with your hosts, Tim Gillen and Ruthie Kierlin.
Hello, nerds. Tim Gillen here, Terrapin Networks, Traverse City, Michigan, thanking you for joining us for the Team Nerd Tech Show, our weekly tech digest for the small business owner on technology issues of the day, some tech news, some tech tips, some tech whatever. We like to talk about a lot of different things, but all relates to the small business, the small office. And by small, we at Terrapin Networks do small stuff. So sometimes people think of a small business having 100 employees. And when you compare it to General Motors, that's true. But when you compare it to a lot of us, that's kind of big. So we talk about stuff that really relates to if you've got 5, 8, 10, 20 computer users. There's really neat stuff we can do now these days with technology and setting up a tech system to give a small office like that a lot of power. We didn't have availability for you just a few years ago, but we do now. So that's what we specialize in, and that's what this show is all about, the Team Nerd Tech Show. We're here every week, and we put it out here on WTCM, News Talk 580 in Traverse City, Michigan, on Sunday mornings, and then we're a podcast that the show is out on the web as a podcast. So I'm going on too long about that. That should be from our illustrious co-host in Queens, New York. Let me introduce Ruthie Kerwin and bring her on in. Hello, Ruthie.
Hello, Tim. How are you this week?
Good, thank you. Good.
Good. We've got a fun show here. We're kind of getting geared up for the holidays. This is episode number 43. And we are going to be talking this week for tech news. There's going to be probably a lot of people getting holiday gifts that are centered around IoT, like Internet of Things, Google Home, Nest, all of that kind of stuff. And recently the FBI has put out a warning for people who are using those IoTs concerning their home network. So let's get into that for tech news. For tech tip, we found this cool article it's on MSN.com, and it's geared towards business owners and how they need to understand some specific terms that their tech team might be using. So it's a great rundown of list. It's just 10 very common business terms in tech, or in tech terms, I should say, in business. And I wanted you to kind of break down some of the ones that are a little bit more unfamiliar from what we've talked about before. And then lastly, for tech gadget, back to the holidays and also business travel. An article that I found on Forbes.com about why we should not be printing our boarding passes, which I always print my boarding pass, and apparently you're not supposed to be doing that anymore. That could be a personal data risk. So yeah, I thought that was kind of interesting too, especially with probably a lot of people doing some flying here pretty soon. So let's get into it with tech news. All right, so here on the Team Nerd Tech Show, welcome back with your host, Tim Gillen. My name is Ruthie Kierwin, and right now we're going to be moving into tech news. Here on the Team Nerd Tech Show, we talk about tech news once a week, and it's usually something that relates to the world of technology, a news piece that also relates to how you are running your business. So let's talk about this IoT FBI warning. What are they warning about exactly?
Well, and this is actually a really good little article, and we'll have the link out at the teamnerdtechshow.com. Ziff Davis had this out there, ZDNet. And so as a reminder to listeners, IoT that's the acronym for the Internet of Things. And that's a term that relates to devices in your home or business that are on the internet. That, for example, a Ring doorbell camera, a refrigerator with a screen on the front that it brings up your calendar and has the weather on it, those kind of things, even perhaps maybe a thermostat, right? Any kind of smart home stuff, if you're able to drive up to your house and hit an app on your phone and it turns the lights on, anything like that, that's attached in any way to the internet. When you put the device in, you had to attach it to a wireless connection for it to do its thing. Anything in your home or business, any device that you're able to monitor with an app on a smartphone, that device has to be on the internet for your phone to be able to talk to it. That means it's part of the Internet of Things. It's an IoT device. Now, here's the issue here, and here's what they're talking about. You might have a new smart TV, pretty cool device, or even a Ring or Nest or some of these, the variety of doorbell cameras. And they've got a camera going, for example, and some of those TVs have a camera so you can do FaceTime or Skype or whatever it might be with your children and grandchildren, that kind of thing. Problem is, where's the security for that? And can someone else, if they're able to get inside your network, be able to use that in a way that you don't want them to use it?
Like spying?
Could be. It could be. It could be potentially that. So what they talk about is how as a very first level of security. This is wise. I'm 100% behind this. This is what we've done at our home, and what I recommend for all of our customers, who I'm the tech manager for anything that's on the IoT side, is that we set it up on a separate network. What that's called a separate network. So here's what we mean by that. You have a network inside your home or business. It's got its own IP, internet protocol, but its own IP addressing scheme. And it's different from what's out on the internet and your cable modem. If it's a home device, your wireless router, a firewall, if it's in a business, and oftentimes in a home, is what handles your inside network talking to the outside network and back and forth. And what they're recommending from the FBI, which again I concur with, is to make a separate network inside your home or business that these devices are on. So in other words, the camera that's on the doorbell can't directly talk to something inside the home, and it doesn't need to. But there's an easier way to do this also that can be really effective at the home. I don't recommend this on the business side, but I certainly do on the home side. So have a good wireless router. And here you can even use something like those Aero mesh devices that you can just plug in around your home to do a mesh, expand the range of your wireless network. And in those, you have the ability to set up a guest network. And you always want to have a guest network. You always want two networks on your wireless access points, a private and a guest. And when the private gives you full access to everything, and that's for the family. And in a business, that's for the staff. But that's for people who are not even good friends. Truly, it's not necessary for anyone to have full access inside that network except people who live in that house. So that's the private network. And then they'll give you an option to set up a guest network. Any good interface now to set up wireless access point will have that. And most of you have done that, and you might have thought, I don't need to do that. Well, do it. Go back and do it. And that's going to make its own, so that's going to make a whole separate subnet by design. And there's always going to be a checkbox there, which will be turned off by default, where you can turn on. I'll say it this way. The default setting for any of those is that the people on the guest network cannot see the inside network.
Okay.
All they can see is the internet. That's the whole point. So friends or family comes over, they're visiting, whatever, you want to give them wireless access, give them the guest one. All they can see is the internet. That's all they need access to.
That's all they need. Yeah, exactly.
They don't need to see anything that's inside your house, including your TV or your media server or anything like that. They don't need it. They don't need to be able to print. I mean, they can live without printing in most cases. And frankly, that's what you want to work around. So if you set up this guest network and you make sure when you set it up that you have not told it, I do want to talk to the inside network, it's going to keep those separate. And it's going to say, again, the default setting will be that people on the guest network cannot see the inside network. There's a variety of phrases that they'll use for that, but it's actually quite obvious. Now, once you've done that, that's where you want to put your IoT devices. Now they're on a separate network. They're effectively on a VLAN. And all your IoT devices, all they need access to really is the internet. That's what they need access to. So one of the first things, one of the simple ways to put some basic security in place for your IoT devices, all they need access to is the internet. They do not need to see your inside network. And that's a good way to start out with some basic level of security, especially for someone who's not a real expert in this. Just make sure that the guest network is all by itself, that all it can see is the internet, and then attach all of those kind of devices, your IoT devices, to that guest network and only to the guest network. That's a great first level of security. Next level of security is to put an actual firewall in place and have some nerd like me, people who do what I do, actually set that up with a VLAN. In a business, that's mandatory. In the home, that's highly recommended. Although if you've got a refrigerator or those kind of things, or even if you have one of those little frames that shows photos, like bring them in off of Google, those are all IoT devices. Anything like that's an IoT device. So it can play a slideshow from your Google Photos or Apple Cloud, that kind of thing.
So to recap real quickly, if the FBI is saying that you need to make sure that all of your IoT devices are on a separate network, you're saying that the easiest way to do that is to set up a guest network through your router, correct?
On the wireless. Yep.
On the wireless.
On the wireless access point.
And the wireless access point. Got it. And then make sure that not only are your guests accessing the guest, but also your IoT stuff is connected to your guest. And then all of your private things are connected to the home network.
Yes, exactly.
Okay, I think I have it. If you're just joining us, you are listening to the Team Nerd Tech Show with Tim Gillen of Terrapin Networks. I am Ruthie Kirwan. So we're going to move now into our tech tips segment, which is when we talk about something that small business owners can use in their businesses right away. And we found the perfect article to kind of like segue us into what we want to talk about this week. There's a term on the internet, explain like I'm 5. So I want you to explain some of these terms to me like I'm 5 years old. Like I don't know any of this kind of stuff. And let's run through real quick of the 10 terms that this article from MSN.com, we're going to have it linked in the show notes for this episode. This is episode 43 if you want to check us out on the teamnerdtechshow.com. And this, let's talk about these 10 items. Can you read them for me real quick? And then we'll go back and we'll talk about the ones that I think we need to kind of dive a little bit deeper into.
The 10 terms that were on this link, which is, as Ruthie mentioned, was from MSN. It's actually is an article in Inc.com, which is a good business magazine and business site. Has lots of good information. So the 10 terms are botnet, CMS, data breach, DDoS, malware, phishing, ransomware, SQLi, VPN, and XSS, or cross-site scripting.
So what's a botnet again?
A botnet is a kind of a robot network. That's where it comes from.
Okay.
And that's where you have some software on a workstation or laptop, let's say, malware, malicious software that you inadvertently installed that came in through a website or through an app or a link or whatever it might be, that's sitting there quietly, and it connects to other computers around the world that have the same software. So if I'm a bad guy and I want to send out something nasty, I've got computers literally around the globe
that can
do this for me.
Okay, got it. It's like a nefarious web.
It's like Skynet, but it's like not cool. Although Skynet's not cool. But anyway, yeah. Sorry.
Yeah, that's over my head.
That's the Terminator reference there. Sorry. Yeah, a little sci-fi movie thing. Sorry. Can't help it.
So what's a CMS? That's content management system?
Yeah, content management system. Where you're going to see that primarily is any place. If you develop a website for your company at square.com, let's say Weebly,
yeah,
Wix, or if you've hired a web developer who puts together a site for you and gives you access where you can go in and change the content. So you log into a web page of some kind, put in your credentials, and then you can go out and change stuff on certain pages. You can add a photo, you can change your hours of operation, you can change the home page, whatever it might be. That's the content management system. And here's the takeaway for the small business owner, and this is sort of a non-issue now. It did not used to be. If you're hiring someone to do some web development for your company's website, which is a smart thing to do, it can really look a lot better. Just be sure that they have some kind of CMS in place so you can make your own minor changes. So it became kind of a plus that any web developer would include a CMS system of some kind.
So the next term we have here is data breach, which I think we're all pretty familiar with the term of data breach.
Yeah.
The other one that I didn't understand totally in here is a DDoS, which stands for the distributed denial of service. What is that exactly?
Well, a DDoS attack, or a DOS attack, you'll also hear it just called a denial of service.
Okay.
That's when bad guys take down a website by flooding it with traffic.
Oh.
So here's the analogy there. If I'm really mad at your store, I hire 1,000 people to cram the front door.
A flash mob or something.
A flash mob, and nobody who's an actual customer can even get in. That's exactly what's happening there. They might use a botnet to do that.
Okay.
Back to number one. They use a botnet, and if I want to take down CNN.com or even your company name.com, I use my botnet to flood traffic. to just all at
So
the
it
same
sends like
time.
fake traffic, basically.
Yeah, well, it just tries to access it, but it does so much of it, it overwhelms the web server
Hmm.
wherever it's being hosted, and overwhelms it, and actually brings the site down, can crash the web server because of this flood of data requests.
The next three words on the list, I think that you and I and our listeners would be a little bit more familiar with: malware, which we talk about
Mm-hmm.
pretty regularly; phishing,
Mm-hmm.
PHISING; ransomware, which obviously we have conversations about ransomware all the time.
Yeah.
But the next one that I didn't really get is the SQLi or SQLi. Can
Mm-hmm.
you describe that exactly? I've heard of SQL, but I don't know exactly what it
Yeah,
is.
SQL, SQL, which we generally refer to as SQL. It's a uh, it's a database engine uh, protocol.
Is it
So
like a code?
no, well, SQL is a way to build a database. It stands for sequential query language.
Okay.
And what that means is instead of all your data being in one big file, you have a big database. Let's take the phone book. That's just a big database. And in the old days, those were in what's called a flat file database, or just one great big honking database. And so when you did a search, it just started at the top and worked its way down. It took a lot longer to find a Q than it did to find an F, because an F was near the top when you did any kind of a search or any kind of an update. You'd update a address, and if the last name started with a Z, it took longer. One
Because it
big
had to
honk
get to Z and
and one
work all
big
its way to
honking
Z.
file. If there's any problem with the file, all your data is at risk. In sequential query language, all your data is kept in different tables. So all the addresses are together, all the names are together,
So you
and
just
then
have to find like the category, the
yeah,
table.
they all link together,
Okay.
and they link together in a variety of ways, and they link together in many-to-many relationships, many names with many streets, one-to-one, my name and my street,
Okay.
that kind of thing. And so, but that's how all databases now are written, and certainly any database that's on the internet. That when you go out to a store, a large store, and you want to check and see what they have in stock, that's doing a back end, as we call it, a back end query to the SQL database saying, how many of this widget do we have in stock? How many of this shirt? How many of this pair of boots? How many is in stock, and what warehouse are they in? So this person in Traverse City who's asking about these boots, when can I get them shipped? Should I not say boots? Do I sound like Northern? Do I
You
sound like
do sound, it's a little youper to say boots.
a little huber? So this customer in Northern Michigan goes and looking for a set of boots, as we say in Northern Michigan, it's
A
boots.
boot. Yeah.
Boots. You go out and looking for the boots, but you want to see how many are in stock, and so it can tell me that these can ship today, and I'll have them by Friday. However, there's some vulnerabilities in a lot of them. If they're not written right, and the website on the front part is not written right, a bad actor can inject some code into the database and into the website, into the web page, and then into the database, that can now start giving that bad actor a way to look and view and maintain control of that database, and maybe unbeknownst to the big Target.com or whoever, Walmart, whoever it might be, who you're trying to buy stuff from. But what does that mean? That also means they can see the fact that you bought those boots, and
Oh
what your
yeah,
credit
your
card is.
information. Oh
Yeah,
yeah,
and
okay.
your street address, and maybe even your phone number, and any number of things. So the SQL injection is a nasty thing that companies, frankly, if on the business side, if your business doesn't have a website like that, it's a non-issue for you. On the
But if you do have a
consumer side,
commerce, yeah.
and on the consumer side, you just gotta hope that Walmart, whoever it is you're dealing with, and sometimes smaller sites, maybe don't always spend the money. So you're looking for things that if the site looks a little bit old-fashioned-y,
Suspicious.
it
Yeah.
probably is.
Okay.
And if it's old-fashioned, that's easy to receive something like a SQL injection.
Well, that's nerve-wracking. The next thing on our list is a VPN, which we covered in a whole episode a few episodes ago. I think it was episode 38. I'll have to double check. But a virtual private network.
Virtual private network. Yep.
But the other one that I didn't know was an XSS, or cross-site scripting. So explain to me what an XSS
Yeah,
is.
cross-site scripting, and the X stands for cross there. So cross-site scripting. What this means is the person who developed the website, if they're not updating everything all the time, they might leave a vulnerability where the different parts of the website, right? The front end where you first go on your home page and you link over to the contact us page, and then the sales page might link to this one of these background databases that we're talking about. Those are all different parts of the site. And a lot of JavaScript will be out there which is a scripting language, which is what can go out and do some programming in the background for the website. Might be where it grabs warehouse data, but it also might be where it grabs the weather locally.
Okay.
A variety of different things that would be used for it. If that's not written well and primarily not updated properly, meaning when some vulnerability comes out, it's left open, and the vulnerability is not immediately patched. Bad actors can go in there and grab a piece of code and have one part of the site talk to another part of the site to bring data back to them.
So
and that's
basically,
called cross-site scripting.
It's stealing it's pretending to be something that it's not, essentially.
Yeah, but it all happens in the background. And so as a small business owner, this is the conversation you'd need to have with your web developer. Now, here's the biggest vulnerability for most small business owners. When it comes to using Squarespace, I think I said Square before I meant Squarespace. Squarespace and Wix and Weebly and some of these, you have to kind of count on them to really handle that part of it. But here's one of the larger vulnerabilities that you might have is if you have a private developer or if you did your site yourself in WordPress. WordPress is terrific, but it has to be updated. And so if you're doing a WordPress site at WordPress and you're paying them for it, you're probably fine. But if you're doing your own hosting at all, or you had someone write it and it's kept out at Bluehost or HostGator or DreamHost or one of these places, one of these web host providers, you've got to be sure that you have someone who knows what they're doing, constantly updating WordPress.
Yeah, and keeping it secure.
Keeping it secure, because if you're not updating it, and that's what the bad guys make a bot, a robot that goes out and crawls the web and finds all the WordPress sites it can find and then starts looking at their versions, and they can tell very quickly the ones that are vulnerable.
It's the same with, I will say this is, as a site, as a WordPress user for a long time, that's the same with plugin or WordPress. You have to make sure that those are also updated, because that's another backdoor entry that bad actors can use to get into. You could have WordPress updated, but if you're not keeping your plugins updated regularly and cleaning them out and making sure that they're up to date, that can do the same thing.
Very good point. And so what does that mean if I'm a small business owner? Probably shouldn't be doing it yourself, because if you're running any kind of business, you're not going to have time to keep up.
It takes a lot of time. Yeah, it truly does.
So you need to hire someone who knows what they're doing, whose job is to do that for you. That's just part of the deal. And if you don't want to screw around with that, which makes sense, you might want to simplify by going to something like Squarespace or actual paid WordPress. But even then, if you're going to be adding your own plugins, they're going to get out of date. And plugins are things that will go out and get today's weather, for example. Or will tie you into PayPal, for example.
Or Google Analytics.
Or a
content form, there's
or a form,
so many
right?
plugins.
Yep. Yeah. And plugins are what really give a lot of power for your ability when you're programming your website. However, they get out of date too, because they end up having security vulnerabilities that some bad guy finds. And they go, oops, we see that some bad guy found that. We didn't know it was there, but it turns out it is. Here's the patch. But you got to go in and apply the patch, which might break what you set up. So you got to be willing to apply the patch and then fix it if it breaks.
It's all a delicate balance sometimes I find when it comes to my WordPress site.
So here's the mistake that a small business owner might make. And listen, it's up and running. That's all I care about. What do you always hear old Tim say? Don't use that as your threshold. Don't send that message. Don't think of it that way.
100% of data breaches happen when everything's running.
Yeah, all data breaches happen when things are running. And so you think, hey, my website's up. That's all that matters, which means now it's vulnerable. So these patches are very, they're not difficult, but they're just time consuming, and someone has to pay attention to it.
Welcome back to the Team Nerd Tech Show with your host, Tim Gillen. I'm Ruthie Kirwan. So we just finished up talking about a tech tip where we ran through the 10 really common terms that business owners should know in tech. And thank you, Tim. Some of those I was pretty familiar with, but I definitely did not know everything. So That was a really good rundown. We're going to have the link for all 10 of those tips, along with more and of an explanation on our website at teamnerdtechshow.com. This is episode number 43 for reference. Now we're going to be moving into Tech Gadget, which is our final and shortest, unfortunately, segment of the show. This is kind of like the more entertaining or interesting aspects of technology. And this is something that I want people to be aware of before we do a lot of traveling for the holidays, or if you're doing a lot of business travel in the new year. It's an article from Forbes.com. Again, I'm going to have that link in the show notes about why we need to stop printing our boarding passes, which I do every time because I always feel like that's safer. But I guess it's not. That's even, and people are doing something on Instagram that is making it even less safe. So, okay, talk to me about this whole printing thing.
Well, it's fine printing your boarding pass as long as you carry along a portable shredder. just carry along a portable shredder, you'll be fine. The whole point is these things now get floated around. They might end up in your suitcase, and then you're at your destination.
You shove them in a magazine,
and you shove it in a magazine. And now you don't care about it because you're on that last flight, so whatever. And you leave it in a magazine, leave it in the seat back. You do whatever, or you take it to the hotel and just toss it into the wastebasket. And now it's just sitting there. It's got a lot of data on it. It's got, and they will sometimes asterisk part of it, but not too much of it. By design, it has to be able to say who you are.
Yeah.
And now it might have your frequent flyer number, might have all sorts of things on there. Your home address, the last 4 numbers of your credit card could be on there.
Mm-hmm.
Certain numbers from your passport could be on there. A lot of things are on there, actually. Take a look at
I've
one of
never
those.
even thought about this, and now it's like giving me anxiety. All of the boarding passes that I've left in seat bags on planes.
Yeah, I just don't want to. And the reason shredders exist is because tearing it up isn't good enough. You think, man, who's going to do that? Well, you don't want to think that, and because some knucklehead will do that, and you want to assume that this has information that you don't want anyone to know. That's your assumption. That should be your assumption.
There's this other thing that people have been doing with their boarding passes that this article is saying stop doing, which is getting excited about wherever they're traveling to and snapping a photo of their boarding pass, putting it on Instagram with the hashtag boarding pass. And scammers are going through that hashtag and just pulling data off photos.
Here's where I guess what in the world would make you think that's a cool thing to do?
You're excited. You're like, nobody's going to steal it. I'm going to Cancun.
You're just bragging. So just put a little braggy thing about, are you going to Cancun?
Don't take a picture of your boarding pass and put it on social media.
Not.
Because especially don't hashtag it, because then the hashtag search page is full of boarding passes.
Now, I guess when you get your new Capital One card in, you could take the front and a picture of the front and the back of that and put it on Instagram and say, hey, look, I got a new card and there's $20,000 of credit on here. Isn't this awesome? Check out my number. It's the kind of the same thing.
They're taking the frequent flyer miles from your frequent flyer account. So they're using this information, logging in, getting your frequent flyer, and then they can cash that out for gift cards. They can transfer the miles. They can use the miles. They can buy a ticket. And they can then just have access to everything. So it's a bad idea. Just be very careful with your boarding passes, especially if you're going to be flying this holiday season.
So, yes, very good advice.
All right, Tim. Well, I think that has to wrap up our show this week. We have solved enough of the world's tech problems. Again, if you have a tech question you want Tim to answer the show, you can always leave us a voicemail at 231-668-9175. You can also send us an email. Our address here is teamnerd@terrapin.tech. This is episode number 43. If you want to go look up any of the show links or find the episode again at teamnerdtechshow.com. We're also on iTunes, Google Music, Stitcher, etc. And then we're also on all the socials. We have a YouTube channel, Facebook, Twitter. We're on everything. So come by and say hi. You can always see any of our past episodes that we've also put up on any of those platforms as well. So I will see you next week. Sounds good?
Sounds good. Thank you.
All right. Have a good one.